compensation for that and for other things that minorities may not be asked to do.
Well, I'm glad you didn't have the same misunderstanding as mine. May I pass? I think he passes with distinction, but just a few humble points for clarification. Well, first of all, obviously, jizya cannot be seen as punishment for people who did not accept to become Muslims. Because if it is a punishment, in fact, if they become Muslims, they will be paying more than jizya. They will be paying zakah. And as you know, zakah in Islam is approximately, depending on the source of income, but the most common one is 2.5%, not of income, but of assets, which could be quite a bit. What is intended for jizya, and why make that distinction? Why don't Christians pay it as zakah? I think this is born out of the religious sensitivity to the feeling of Christians. You cannot go to a Christian under an Islamic state and tell him pay zakah, because zakah is not just a tax. Zakah also has a worship element in it. It's one of the pillars of Islam, so it has a religious connotation to it. But in the meantime, as you have rightfully said, when you have covenanted people, number one, they enjoy all the services of the state, including what we call today the social security. And we have an example in Medina when Umar, the second caliph, saw a Jew, an old Jew, begging, and he asked him why, and he was very upset. He said to the treasurer of the state, you might say, the minister of finance, that you should go around and look for any person like that and preserve their dignity by having a regular payment for them. So that means then both Muslims and non-Muslims under an Islamic state are entitled for those services. But where do you finance those? Just like the discussion in the Congress, where do you pay for these programs? Muslims are obligated to pay the zakah, and sometimes they have to pay sadaqah, and within Islamic law the government may impose additional taxes if it's not enough to take care of the state, and they have full right to enjoy that like Muslims. Would it be fair then that only the Muslim majority carry the full burden and the minority would have nothing? It's not for their dignity also to feel that they are freeloaders. So that's one element. The second element is that Muslims are obligated to defend, but the defense is a little different from the concept of defense in modern armies or states, nation states. Defense in Islam has a religious connotation also. It is jihad. It's struggle to protect the faith and the people in that community of faith, which means that it would be embarrassing to ask a non-Muslim to put his life on the line and make him sacrifice his life for a religion that he does not believe in. However, you'll be surprised to know that there have been exceptions also in Islamic history, and that provide a basis for new jurisprudential interpretation. Number one, there have already been recorded cases like the letter by Utbah ibn Farqad to the people of Azerbaijan, that these people offered to protect the borders against any enemy attack. So he wrote to them that anyone who engaged in that, he would not have to pay the jizya for that year that he's participating in this. Number two, a very famous case, Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah, when Muslims were in Syria, they took the jizya from Christians in Syria. And then they realized that Heraclius had collected a very huge army, and they were unsure whether they will be able to fulfill their dhimma, or the covenant contract they have with them. You know what he did? He ordered that the jizya that was collected from the Christians be returned to them. And some historians say that the Christian clergy at that time were very impressed, and they said to them, if these were the Romans who were claiming to be Christians, if these were the Romans, they would have not returned a penny to us, they would have even taken whatever is left with us. To the point that they prayed for barakah, for blessing for the Muslim army, and prayed that they would have victory over the Romans. So there is an established jurisprudential principle that jizya could also be removed if a person offered to participate in the defense, or if Muslims are unable to defend them. Furthermore, actually you'll find that the jizya amount is less than what Muslims even pay for zakah. It's even an additional consideration to the non-Muslims. Jizya, number one, is imposed only on males. not females. It's imposed on able-bodied people, not on all people. The clergy are exempt from that. And that's amazing because the zakah in Islam is obligation on both male and female. And that proves indeed that it is imposed on people who are able-bodied. So it's a matter of like substitute of participation in the defense of the country. And then there was one amazing incident. Some of the Arabs in northern Arabia, when Umar, tried to arrange for them to pay jizya, they say, we don't like jizya. We don't like it. To them, in their Arab background and culture, they felt it is humiliating for them. Umar asked them, how do you want to pay? Say, we want to pay it as sadaqah, as charity. He accepted that from them if the term is offending to them. See how much even accommodation could be added. And finally, one more point. Jizya is not a matter of belief of absolute cornerstone of Islam. And there are modern Muslim jurists today who say that if there is no need even for collecting it, there's no need for it. In modern systems, for example, when Muslims pay zakat and the state might impose on top of that some additional tax on both Muslim and Christian, we don't have to be too dogmatic saying, oh no, these are the Zimmi people, they have to give jizya an yadin wa hum saghirun, with the interpretation that was explained earlier. It was very erroneous what saghirun really means. So I think once we look in the jizya in the proper context, it would be even more beneficial.
One final, last question. This is oral tradition at its best,
Actually, one is a short comment, and actually the other one may be a short comment, but I'd like them just to respond. First, with regards to the issues of, for example, what's going on in Bosnia and the Gulf War, going back a few years to the Gulf War, I should say clearly that in our community we worked with a number of Christian groups, and they were quite active in opposing the war. We were invited to a variety of churches from different denominations, and the empathy that they felt and the anger and fear and everything that was inside of them was, I think, something similar to that experienced by Muslims. And I would even go so far as to say some of them were working so hard against the war that they put many Muslims to shame by their works. So I think that should be made clear. And I think that even now there are people who are doing that. The problem with that is that it didn't translate into public action. That although there were people in the churches who were quite involved, it didn't translate into the community. And of course, the concerns that it raised was why weren't the religious communities able to do something about it? And in other words, why did the religious communities fail to achieve the objectives of convincing their co-religionists, of their followers, to do something by not going to war, or by, for example, lifting the arms embargo or something to that effect? And that became a big issue. And of course, that's something that I cannot answer. I think that, especially in this country, a lot of the Christian communities are questioning that themselves. Why, when there's an issue that needs to be raised, what can be done about that? And that gets to the second comment, and that's about that Christians and others, the co-religions in the United States, Christians in the Middle East, are concerned about the survival of Christianity in, let's say, the Middle East. And as Muslims, I guess we find that to be a little bit strange because Christianity has survived throughout the period of Islam. And although there are these radicals that come out with erroneous statements, still the tradition of Islam has been very tolerant. And I think that the problem of Christians and Muslims and others is not an Islamic state or anything like that, but secularism. For example, in the United States, what's causing problems for everyone is the fact that religion has been completely separated from our lives. In terms of, and it's not just in terms of the war, but in terms of, for example, birth control, in terms of teenage pregnancies, drugs, where is the religious community and